What's up, 412? Yo, it's been over a month since we've been at 412. Anybody excited to be here tonight? Come on, come on. Listen, look, I love to get up here and tell you guys about Jesus. I get so energized by it. And you know what I mean? Even my team getting demolished in the championship game on Monday is not going to keep me down. I'm still going to rep my squad, but also, come on, because of Jesus, we're a family. And y'all, help me grieve, okay? I'll take cookies. You could buy me my Chick-fil-A at the after party tonight. How about that? But y'all, I don't know what you've been up to over the past month and a half, but I'm just so glad to see you. Come on, look at the person next to you. Say, I'm glad you're here. Like, just genuine. I'm glad you're here. Look to the other person. I'm glad you're here. So good. So good. So good. All right, so if you don't know who I am, like JR said, my name's Jimmy, and I get the privilege of running this thing, which is not only just amazing, but it's a joy of mine. And so it's so good. So let's jump into it tonight because, you know, look, it's been a month, right? And I just want to get after it tonight. I believe that, like, what we saw God do in 2018 has me thinking, God, what's next in 2019? Anybody else believe that? I'm looking at it and saying, man, I had a good time of rest at the end of 2018. I took the last few weeks and I spent time alone with God. I spent time with my family. I spent time with my daughters and my wife, and I really rested because, you know, really think about it. How many of you have ever, like, watched Netflix for, like, 5 hours straight, and then all of a sudden you're more tired at the end of watching Netflix for 5 hours than you were before? Because really rest isn't, I'm just going to turn it off and, like, watch something on TV, because you kind of get more tired that way. Rest is really, I'm going to pause my regular workflow, and I'm going to look back and celebrate what God has done in my life. If you look at the way, like, God created the world, he took the last day and he looked back on what he made and he said it was good, and he celebrated all the things that he had just accomplished. And so for me, I was able to finish the year, and I was able to look back on 2018. I was able to look back and see all the amazing things that God did in the last year. And man, I was so encouraged because God showed up in 2018, and it was a beautiful thing to see. And I was able to look back and I was able to be like, man, that was great. God, thank you for doing that in me and through me. Thank you on a personal level for connecting with me. And year after year after year, my relationship just personally with Jesus is getting stronger. Not because of anything I've done, just because I've positioned myself to learn and to grow. And then through the ministry, it was phenomenal. And honestly, here's what I believe. Like, look, if God did so much then, it gives me faith to know that he'll do so much more ahead. Because we might change, but God doesn't change. If he did it before, he'll do it again. Come on, somebody say amen. And that's really what it looks like. And so I don't know where you're at in your journey, but here's what I know. If you would be open and you would open yourself up and say, God, I want to know you more in 2019. Like, even tonight, God, I want a fresh word from you. I want to hear from you tonight. I promise you, because I've seen it happen year after year after year. If you draw near to God, he'll draw near to you. And so I hope for you in 2019. You know, there's so many times where, like, we'll sit at the beginning of 2018 and we'll look at the end of 2018. We'll look at the end of 2019. I said it twice. I can't do it. At the beginning of last year, if you could have told yourself, man, that's where I'm going to end up at the end of the year, you'd be like, wow, that was crazy what God did. And here we are at the beginning of this year. And if we could think, God, what is it going to be like at the end of this year? If you grew me that much last year, or you grew this ministry that much last year, what are you going to do the year in front of us? And I love telling stories of what God has done. I love to read the Bible, which is a collection of stories of what God did 2,000 years ago through the man of Jesus. Through the man of Jesus who proved himself to be God when they killed him publicly, then he came back to life. And all of a sudden, here we are talking about him 2,000 years later. And I love telling stories about what Jesus did 2,000 years ago. But y'all, I'm excited to say I don't have to look back only 2,000 years ago. I can look back in the last handful of years and tell you, look at what God has done. I'm not just looking at scriptural history. I'm looking at 412 history. And I can say, God is moving. You want evidence? I'll give you some evidence. I'll give you evidence that there's a God who loves you, God that cares about you, that God is working in you and God can work through you, that his kingdom is coming here on earth as it is in heaven. And there's so much good evidence. And kind of the way I have kids, right? I like to explain it to them sometimes. I'm like, can you see the wind? And they were like, Yeah. I'm like, no, you can't. The opposite happens when I preach. When I say, I've seen God, some of you are like, no, you can't. Well, just like I see the wind, I can see the effects of the wind going through a tree. And I may not see the wind itself, but I see what the wind is doing. Therefore, I know that the wind is there. I can feel the wind. When the wind is blowing across your face and you can feel the wind on your face, you don't see the wind. You're not technically in that moment seeing the wind, but you are feeling the wind. Does that mean the wind is not real? No, it just means you are feeling the wind. And tonight, I want to share with you some stories about how I've seen God, about how I felt God, not just in scriptural history, but here at 412 history. And I pray that this encourages you to say, what? I want to be a part of that. I want to meet Jesus like that. I want to have a deep, meaningful relationship with him like that. So let me tell you this a little bit of a story, though, because it's going to be, pretty neat, because even before Jesus, there was this nation of Israel. And we love to study about the nation of Israel because Jesus ended up being a part of that nation. And so we have this Old Testament, and we study this Old Testament based on their history. I'm not an Israelite. I'm not a Jew. So this is not technically my history. I'm an American. I'm proud to be an American. You know what I mean? And but Jesus was an Israelite, so we studied the Israelites' history. It was the chosen people of God. And the way they got their start was pretty interesting. They were slaves in Egypt for 400 years. 400 years they were slaves in Egypt. And God raised up a prophet and said, I want you to go and set my people free. And so this guy by the name of Moses, who got called by God from a fiery bush, and he's like, man, God, I don't believe in myself. But God's like, look, I believe in you. And it's not about your gifts and talents anyway. It's about your willingness to stay connected to me. And so Moses is like, all right, I'll try, even though I have a stuttering problem. And he literally goes to Pharaoh and he says, let my people go, right? I don't know. That Charlton Heston said that in that movie. But he literally is like, let the people of Israel go. And Pharaoh didn't know how to speak that language, so God spoke Pharaoh's language of power and might, sent 10 plagues upon Egypt, and finally at the end of that, Pharaoh let the people go, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of the people of Israel who were slaves for 400 years, they are left out of Egypt. Pharaoh regrets it. This is all, Israel history. You can read it in the Old Testament. Pharaoh regrets it, chases after him with chariots and his army, and God miraculously parts a sea called the Red Sea. They walk through on dry ground. Pharaoh chases after them. Sea collapses in. Pharaoh's dead. And now they're on their way to the promised land that God had promised their nation hundreds of years earlier. And they wander through a wilderness for 40 years on the way to this promised land, this land that God has promised them. And as they wander for 40 years, God provides for them. Every single morning, God provides for them. When they called it manna, which means, what is that? Literally, they would wake up and it would be like, oh, Uber delivered something to me, or whatever, the food service. What's that called? Waiter, yeah. Waiter delivered food to me this morning, right? God was doing that 6,000 years ago, right? He didn't even need an app. But, God provided. God led them through a pillar of a cloud by day, and that cloud wouldn't dissipate at night. It turned into a fire at night, a pillar of fire. Anybody remember the bonfire? I told that story. And God provided. God led them. God took care of them. And there was this moment to where they were on they could see the promised land, and they had the Jordan River in front of them. And God was like, look, I've provided for you before. I split the Red Sea before. So this river that's in front of you, if I can split a sea, I can split a river. He said, go ahead and walk through the Jordan River. And they go to walk through the Jordan River, and God does it again. He splits a river, and the whole nation just walks across on dry land. They're like, God, you've given us provision. God, you've shown us the way, and you keep splitting water. It's awesome. Like, So this stuff happens, and they walk through, and then I told you that so I could read you this moment, because God doesn't want us to forget what he's done in the past. Because when we forget what he's done in the past, it keeps us from believing what he'll do in the future. And when we remember what God has done in the past, it encourages us to say, he is the same God yesterday, today, and forever. And if he did it before, he'll do it again. If he did the Red Sea, he'll do the Jordan River. Like, my God doesn't change even though I do. His grace is still sufficient for me when I gave my life to Christ in junior high and I made a bunch of bad decisions, but God is still the same. And if you run after him tonight the way you did back then, he doesn't change even though you did. If he saved you before, his grace is sufficient again. If you surrender your life to him. And so check this out. So this is Joshua chapter 4. I told you all that to tell you this. Let's read this together. So it says, when the nation had finished passing over the Jordan River, the Lord said to Joshua, take 12 men from the people. From each tribe, take a man and command them, saying, take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan and from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you. And they laid them down in the place where you lodge tonight. Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe. Again, we're reading history. And Joshua said to them, pass before the ark of the Lord your God in the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel, and this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And when we passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever, so that generations could go and parents could come by and they could see those stones and be like, those stones were in the middle of that river. How did we get those stones? God cut off the waters, and we walked through those waters as a nation because God not only did it at the Red Sea, which is hundreds of miles away, but God did it right here. We entered from the wilderness and into the promised land. And you could tell the stories of God's miracles, and it would encourage generation after generation. It would encourage them to say, man, we are God's people. God loves us. God is for us. God is there to give us his grace and his love and to give support to us. And he said, and these stones shall be a sign. He's basically saying, don't forget the things that I've done. I have a privilege here. That's why I loved having Gabby up here. Gabby has come to 412 longer than I have been to 412. And she has a perspective of seeing God move. She has a different kind of perspective. And so I have two guests tonight. They're legends. They're 412 legends in my eyes. One, we flew from Colorado to be here tonight just so she could tell us some stories. And we're excited about that. And then Diego, he's a small group leader for us. He not only grew up in this ministry, but he's now a leader in this ministry. So can y'all give me a huge, wild 412 family welcome to Karen and Diego. Come on, y'all. Grab a seat, man. Grab a seat. So we're going to take the next 20 minutes, and we're just going to tell stories. We're going to tell stories, and it'd be fun to kind of start off this way, because I want to know my audience. It'd be helpful to know the audience. If you can't tell, this one is Karen. This one's Diego. All right, so how many of you have been here for longer than 5 years? If you've been here longer than 5 years, that's you. Yeah, if you've been here longer than 5 years, my hand's not up. Come on, put your hands up and keep them up, okay? You've been here longer than 5 years, keep your hand up. My hand's not up because I got here 5 years ago. If you've been here 4 years, keep your hand up because you've been here longer than 4 years. If you've been here longer than 4 years, okay? Here's that group of, oh, yeah, me, that's me. Longer than 4 years, okay? You've been here longer than 3 years. You can join us with your hands up. Okay, great, another group. 2 years, you've been here for about 2 years. Keep your hands up. Once your hands up, keep them up. Been here for about 2 years. How many of you have been here for over a year? You've been here over a year. Just over a year. Awesome. 6 months. You've only been here about 6 months. Anybody here only been here about 6 months? All right. And then how many of you have been here at least once? Anybody ever been here at least once, right? That's awesome. Great. Now that's great to see. So that being said, we're going to tell stories. And I want you guys to give the same grace that you give to me when I talk up here. I want you to extend that to Karen and Diego. They don't do this all the time. This is an act of faith and trust. And Karen earlier was like, Jimmy, do you feel like you're going to pee your pants? And I was like, that's a weird question. And then I was like, oh, you're going to pee your pants. And she was like, yes. Anyway, so that literally happened back there during the host segment. And sorry to air that. But it's fun. So here, we're going to tell stories. Let's tell some stories.
Do they have to be appropriate stories?
Yes, they need to be appropriate stories.
Oh,
we're not going to air everybody's sin, all right?
Ouch.
I know all your sins, God tells me, and then anyway, but okay, so here's the first thing. We haven't been down in this room for the longest time. So I want each of you to give me a descriptor of the original, when I got here 5 years ago. Give me a descriptor of what the room used to look like upstairs. Give us a descriptor.
Horrible. I mean, it was really cool. There's a lot of creative things in the room.
For the 90s, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, for the 90s. Pastor Rick loved it.
What did it feel like upstairs?
It felt like a very small home.
Yeah.
A very small home.
Very small,
It was cozy.
It was like you were like indoor, but you were outdoor, and it was like you're at a pizza shop. That's kind of the best way you could put it. Anybody was there for that when it was like a hub pizza shop thing? It was weird. It was weird, to be honest.
It was pretty weird.
And then, so in 2014, we did our first remodel upstairs. Yes. That room would only house about 100 people. And then God grew the ministry in late 2013, early 2014. And I'll say this, Karen was great because she was there in between some youth pastors, and I came in from Pennsylvania, and I was like, hey. And one of the things that was great was the amount of adult small group leaders or adult leaders that were willing to invest in the ministry. The ministry went, in 2013 was around 30 to 40 teenagers total. That's smaller than the size of our 9th grade girls small group, right? 9th grade girls, where are you at? Y'all are at least 30 look at this, at least 30 to 40 right there. So there's about 30 to 40 teenagers, which is amazing. Like 30 to 40 young people learned about God. But there was about 15 to 17 adults invested in the ministry at that time. And so when I came in, I remember just being like, look, I love youth ministry. God's gifted me. I could grow this thing to 80 kids in like 6 months. And everyone's like, whoa, you must think you're awesome. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. I could do that. I was like, but here's the reality. It'll never go past 80 because I can't do more than that. But the 15 to 17 adult leaders in this room right now, if each of you invests in 10 people, 10 teenagers, our youth ministry can grow to 170 like this. That's all it takes. And now today, we have over 40 adults in the room right now who are investing into you. And that's why we can grow this ministry to at least 400 right now. And we're close to that as a ministry, which is amazing. There's just over 400 chairs total in this room. And look at the size we used to be 30 to 40, now we're 300 to 400. How cool is that? Right? It's crazy. It's great stuff. Anyway, okay, so, but not every night is super smooth.
True.
No, not every night is super smooth. So I asked Karen to tell the story, because I'm too embarrassed to tell the story, of a certain night, if you were here for this, a certain night during the You've Won Me worship series. But it was a great night, but I need you to tell the story. So tell them the story, Karen. It was a good night. This is one of those stories that has a great meaning to it, but it's embarrassing to start off. Go.
Well, one night, Jimmy's preaching on You Won Me, and it was a series on worship. I think specifically you were talking about bowing down and praising and stuff like that. Well, it was a very beautiful moment, but also a very funny moment that I love to remember a lot because Jimmy led us in worship. And
I didn't plan to.
He didn't, but he was literally surrendered to God in that moment and was really like, it was a very powerful moment. And I can't sing the words, but you can.
I'm not going to.
Oh my gosh, if you sang those
I'm
words.
not singing it right now. There's no way.
Yes.
Unless
sing
it,
it.
no.
I think you should sing it. Sing it, sing it.
Okay, listen. I will state the lyrics of the song. You can insert the song. What happened is we were talking about how worship isn't only about the music and the quality. It's about the position of your heart. And we're talking about bowing down and surrender to God and lifting up worship. And I just really felt like led as I was on stage we were worshiping, and literally the entire room, because at this point, this was 2016, in this part of our history. We had just done a remodel. It was beautiful. The whole room was packed. I think there was like 150, maybe 200 in the room that night, and everybody was on their knees before God. And I promise you, like 3/4 of the room was crying. Like it was beautiful. I was crying. That's why I couldn't sing that well, and
yeah, that's why.
And I tried to sing the words, "You are God and I am not." I tried to sing those words, but it came out like weeping and like, "You are God and I am not." It sounded like that, and but it's because God was moving. And
Yeah, it was a really beautiful moment. It was one of those moments that Carly Knoll was an intern that year, and she was at service every single week. And remember she had her dance competition. She had rehearsal.
yeah,
the next day at internship, we were talking about it, and she was so mad that she couldn't be there. And then we told her about how powerful it was to have everybody in that room literally on their knees crying, people that you would never expect to be in this moment. And Carly was so upset. So that's testament, like, you don't ever want to miss a Wednesday because you never know what's going to happen in this very room. And it was powerful.
Yeah, it's very true. If you saw Carly Newell today and asked her about the You've Won Me night where they worship,
still mad.
she would still be mad about that. She missed it or whatever. But I definitely look back at that, and that is one of the stones. The thing that I'm so proud about you guys is that when people come here, music is the language that the next generation speaks, right? It's powerful. Y'all listen to music all the time. Let's be honest, we all listen to music all the time, right? And music is powerful. And so we've always dedicated ourselves to having great music at 412, or from the earliest stages, and Will coming on board at an early stage, and Will Gallagher, if you guys know him, really came in and was like, really gonna make this, yeah, absolutely. Oh, he's here, yeah, Will. Back in the day, it was just me and Will rocking it. It was fun. And here's the thing, I can like Adam Sandler kind of sing at the bonfire goofiness like thing, but it's just been beautiful. And y'all saw the first song that opened up. Can you give it up for our musicians and our band that we have? Oh, they're phenomenal. But more than that, just to speak life into you guys, I always say, like, the worst thing you could ever do is invite someone to like a concert and then act like you hate the artist. Like, oh, I'm such a huge Bieber fan, and you show up and you're like, no, if you're a Bieber fan, you're gonna be up there going, oh my God, it's Bieber. You spit on my face. Whatever, bad analogy. I don't know, like he's singing, I don't know, whatever. Sign my face, how about that? Anyway, I say that though because the worst thing you could ever do is invite someone to 412 and act like you don't care about God. Yeah. It's the worst thing you could ever do. Because then they're going to be like, wait, I thought you cared about God. Why are you acting too cool to raise a hand, or you're too cool to sing a song? And y'all have always been so good at engaging in worship, engaging with the songs. And it doesn't always have to look like bowing down. That's part of it. If you did it every time, it wouldn't be special. But y'all have always been great, and I love you guys for it. And I can put that back to that stone, to where God was like, it was a beautiful. Was anybody there for that night? Anybody remember that night? A few of you guys were there, 2016? It was a beautiful night. It was good. Okay, so in 2014, there was another night that I want to share. It was another stone, another night that we look back to and say, we have a great music culture here, and I could trace it back to that You've Won Me night. But we also we believe that God's going to do great things at this ministry. Anybody else believe that? Like, anyone want to testify to that? I could trace that stone back to something that happened in January of 2014. Y'all, it's 2019. And the story that Diego's going to share has to do with that. He's going to share some other things and stuff like that, but it's eventually going to get back to that moment. So Diego, share with us your heart and just just share your story and then get us to that moment, and then we'll move on from there. But y'all, give it up for Diego. This is going to be good.
I hope it's good. I'm just upset that I'm going first. Need tissues up here, man.
You're good.
Need some tissues. Yeah, just letting you know, I'm going to cry. But my name is Diego. I was an intern last year, and obviously now I'm a small group leader. But I just want to share that testimony of what God has done in the 412 ministry as a whole. I think it was late 6th grade year or early 7th grade. It was one of those times. Chase was my small group leader. He's back there.
Oh, come on. Anybody love Chase? Anybody in here? Yeah.
I'm glad you guys love him. But no, then I have Sam over there. He was part of my small group, and that's one of the guys that helped me grow in life. Big Cat also, like those are the people that stick out to me. But I came in. It was upstairs, and I just came in. I was just like, man, this is pretty cool. I was forced to go to 412. Like, I wasn't forced. I was tricked to go to 412. It was just something I always had to ride along with my brother, and wherever he went, I had to go. I didn't have my driver's license, or I didn't even have a car. So wherever he went, I went. And he just came here to visit his best friend. And yeah, so I just came here, and then I just started playing ping pong. Started playing ping pong upstairs with this guy named Travis Walker, who I think, yeah, that's a strange name to you guys, but to us it sounds like home. Yeah, Trav Walk. But that's in that moment, just playing ping pong stuck, right? Because somebody was willing to just play with me. Just play with me and just make me feel at home, because my brother was on doing his own thing. So this is the first time that me and my brother were separated, and I feel like we were separated so we can grow differently. Does that make sense? Yeah. But that was good. So then it got to the point that 412 got a little bit too big to where we were. It got too big, so then summers came, and Jimmy would ask me, hey, bud, would you mind coming to 412 to see, to do remodeling with me? And I was like, I don't have a job, but the only thing you have to do is just pick me up and feed me, because that's something very important for my dad, for me to be fed. And so which he did, he picked me up every morning, and he also fed me every single day. And so we just got working, and it was just a beautiful moment to just see us working here. Yes, it was tiring, but it was for the fact that so we can grow more. But that leads me to that very special moment that tears are coming soon. That Jimmy's talking about. Is in the fact we were still upstairs. We did our second remodeling. We were like, hey, like we can't grow anymore here. Like we can't grow anymore here. Well, what he did was he got a couple of us, people that were constant in the church, little youth people, and I think it was the Up program people, right? I think it was them that you got us together, and he brought us here. He brought us to this room. It looked differently, different chairs, different stage, different setup here, but he told us, pray that one day this auditorium will be filled, right? And at that time, I think we were ranging like 100, 150. Maybe on a good day. If Jimmy was dressing good, that's how much we would do. But I was just like, he wants us to pray over this. I'm just like, this is a big space, and I'm just like, this is not gonna happen. And I'm like, this is impossible, right? Because all my life, ever since I started chasing after God, I've always been taught by pastors. I'm like, hey, if you're gonna pray realistic prayers. Because if not, you're just gonna be letting yourself down every single time. Pray realistic prayers, and for me, that was a very unrealistic prayer. And obviously, through growth and things like that, I've come to attest that to Jimmy, that was a realistic prayer, because at that time he had a way bigger image of who God was in his life. So for me, it was unrealistic because I didn't have enough faith to believe in God. But Jimmy was like, no, I have enough faith for you to pray with me, so we're going to pray together, and we're going to pray to a realistic God, a realistic prayer, right? And obviously, like now, I have to blind the lights to see who's all the way in the back. And that's, to me, is beautiful. And that's why I'm getting overwhelmed, because I don't know any of you guys. Oh, well, I know most of you guys, sorry. I don't know all you guys, but we prayed for all you here. We pray that you guys will receive God, will receive his glory, will receive his love, and just not be ashamed to proclaim that, hey, he is my God, and you didn't end up here for a reason, right? And that just shows that God doesn't respond just like that. So work like it depends on you, but pray like it depends on God. Every single day. So the power of prayer is amazing, man.
Very true. I appreciate it. Y'all, glove on Diego for a second. That's what's awesome. Computer and everything? Oh. They have a picture? Is that what you're saying? Throw the picture up?
Yeah.
Oh, that was the night you balled.
Yeah, that's the You Won Me night.
Yep.
Yeah, you can barely see that. We'll throw it on the social media as well. That's everybody on their knees upstairs for the You've Won Me moment. I think, and it's crazy sitting up here. Like, I've told that story 2,000 times. Like, that we were in this room, and that was 2014. That's 5 years ago. How old are you now?
I'm going to be 20 next month.
Okay, so you were like 14, 15
Yes.
years old when we did that. Not only to see just like your long obedience in the right direction, because we all know you weren't perfect over the last 5 or 6 years, but I can attest that you've been connected to God over the last 5 or 6 years. And it's just beautiful to see. And if you're 14, 15 years old in this room, Diego he got to see with his own eyes a group of 50 people grow to 300 to 400. He got to see with his own eyes a room that was empty be full. And if God did that, what's God going to do next through you? Like, because look, the realistic prayer doesn't stop at a full room. There's 16,000 teenagers within driving distance of this church. Look, they don't have buildings big enough in our city for that, right? Remember, tell the story real quick of the boy at camp, just quickly,
Yes.
and then we'll do the other story.
There was a boy probably 4 years ago at camp. We were at Student Life Camp. He's in middle school, and we were just praying stuff. And one of the first prayers that we started praying was for there to be 412 students in 412. And at that moment, we were kind of like, I mean, that could definitely happen, but
We were like giggling. We're like,
Yeah,
that's a
we're like,
silly prayer. Like, that's so
all
many.
right, you middle schooler, I know that's a big prayer, but okay, we'll pray it. But then he said, no, let's not just pray that. Let's pray that one day we have 412 at Ford Park. Dang, like that's a bold prayer, and I believe that's gonna happen.
How many of you hear that and you're like, that's an unrealistic prayer? I don't think it's unrealistic, because I serve a God who loves this city, who loved you enough to bring you here tonight so that you would hear the good news. And if I got 300 to 400 faithful teenagers in 2019, I believe that one day we'll have 412 at Ford Park. Anybody with me?
Yeah.
Anybody with me? There aren't buildings big enough. So Karen's got a unique perspective because she's been with us for a while, and then God moved her and her husband to Colorado. So share us perspective of the promised land. Right? This is where we're going to shift into the series that's going to lead us to Winter Retreat, is that those who have gone before us, like the Diegos who were in student ministry upstairs in the pizza shop, I call that 412 in the wilderness. The journey, y'all, we have a state-of-the-art next-gen center. We've got multiple musicians in our bands leading us in amazing worship, right? Y'all have the best youth pastor on the planet. Y'all have, am I allowed to humble brag? Y'all got some of the best creative leadership. It's like, y'all, this is ministry in the promised land, right? Give us the perspective of so we're no longer in the wilderness. We've crossed over the Jordan, and we're in the promises of God. Because what was a prayer is now a promise, right? What was an unrealistic view to him is now, look, this is common. This is every week. What do you mean that's a crazy prayer? Anybody with, y'all know. Anyway, so give us some perspective of ministry in the promised land.
Okay, so I've been able to watch all this stuff happen. I've been at Praise for 20 years, and so I've seen a lot of things happen and God grow this ministry incredibly and moving in people's lives. So me and my husband moved to Colorado 9 months ago, and since then we've gone to 3 different churches, and in those churches, this doesn't exist. This is not there. Like the idea that you guys are here, this opportunity that y'all get to be a part of this is insane because it's not everywhere. The love that you guys have for God, the way you guys get to worship God and hear an incredible message every week, it's not everywhere. And I love watching social medias on Wednesday night because I get to see it from that perspective, and God is just doing some amazing things here in you guys and through you guys, and it's crazy. I love watching it, but I wish I was here. Sometimes, I'm in Colorado because I need to be, but yes, it's incredible here.
I know we're telling stories from 5-6 years ago, but y'all, even in the last year, we've experienced God move. From when this guy at the end of his senior year preached a message, every pain has a purpose, to God giving visions, like straight up stuff you've read in the Bible. And we started talking about overflow. We started talking about God's overflow pouring out and salvation's happening, to being able to come into this room and have curtains in this room because we're like, we don't want the room to be too big, but we're gonna move down here and get all the tech and all this sort of stuff, to quickly overflowing to where we don't have curtains up anymore, and we're almost maxing out this room. You know what I mean? I mean, y'all realize, look around, we're literally 50 people away from not being able to do ministry in this room anymore. What are we gonna do next? It's beautiful to see that we're not only talking about stories that happened thousands of years ago, we're not only talking about stories that happened 5 years ago. God's moving right here, right now. You may not think that you see it, but you're looking at the effects of the wind. You're looking at You can feel the wind right now if you're in this room. Because there's a tangible uncomfortableness to when your pastor just said to you, 412 at Ford Park, right? But how could we get ourselves to a place to say, look, I don't just simply go to a church. I am the church. And if I can own it, if I want to be the church, I want to grow in the right direction. God's just looking for a group of people whose heart is whole towards him, and he'll give strong support to that. Y'all, we're going to stand here. We're not going to judge people. We're going to bring them in here, and we're going to show them the love of God and say, you don't have to keep living that old way of living because that's only going to steal, kill, and destroy your life. You get the opportunity to live for Jesus. You get the opportunity to live with grace. You get the opportunity to live with love, joy, peace, patience, forgiveness. There's a better way to live your life, and it's in Jesus Christ. And we're not just looking at this guy like he's a great moral teacher. This dude raised from the dead. And that's with the stone that we'll always surround ourselves. That's the cornerstone of this ministry. This has nothing to do with my name, has nothing to do with her name, has nothing to do with his name, has everything to do with God's name. And if we build our individual lives on the cornerstone of Jesus Christ, and then together as a ministry, if we build our lives on the cornerstone that is Jesus Christ, nothing can separate us. Nothing can stop us from the move of God that's going to happen. Amen? Stand to your feet. We're going to sing a couple songs. Hang with me. This is not the moment to leave yet. We're going to sing a few songs. One more time. Can y'all give it up for Karen and Diego, their courage, their willingness? Biblical rest means looking back on what God has done, allowing that to encourage you to see what God will do, right? We looked back on what God has done, and I'm encouraged because now I'm looking at it and being like, what's next? What will God do next? You 7th, 8th, and 9th graders that are in this room, I don't know why I left the 6th graders out. You 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th graders in this room, you get to be the generation that that is going to see 412 at Ford Park. You will be that generation. You will be the one who heard that, and one of you is going to sit on that stage with me or with somebody, I'm not going to promise, with thousands of young people. And we're going to say, look, he parted the Red Sea, and he'll part the Jordan. He did it before. He'll do it again. Y'all, you have the opportunity of a lifetime right now to be a part of a ministry to where half the time I walk in here and I'm like, what the heck? This is our youth group. You know what I mean? It's okay to be like, God, what the heck? This is our youth group. I don't want to get lost in the shuffle. But God, I'm going to stay connected to you. If you did it before, you'll do it again. I hope that you're encouraged tonight. I hope that you're encouraged because over the next few weeks, I'm going to just take some principles of what it's like to do ministry in the promised land to where we will become the type of people where God will fulfill dreams. Because I'm dreaming. I hope you dream with me. And the invitation is not to perfection. The invitation is to connection with Jesus. The only way we're going to do this is through the power of God in our lives. And what are you willing to do? The baton is now handed to you, this generation. Seniors, let's finish this next 6 months as strong as possible. Juniors, let's step up into the influence that God has given you over this ministry. Middle schoolers, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young. Why don't you guys start leading the ministry now in the way that you worship, in the way that you get after God, in the way that you have conversations about God. Let's do it. Y'all, I'm going to have a fun time doing it. Like, we're going to have a fun time doing it because life with Jesus is joy. Life with Jesus is fun. Life with Jesus is full. Life with Jesus, look, this is cool. This is cool. Has nothing to do with anything other than God at work in us. If you're here tonight, bow your heads real quick because I want to make an opportunity because maybe you've never heard it like this before, but you're like, what? I'm seeing God. Feels weird to even say. But just like I see the wind, just like I feel the wind, I feel something right now. I've seen these stories. I'm standing in a miracle. You were literally standing in an answered prayer. You're standing in a miracle. You're standing in an answered prayer. And tonight you're like, I gotta serve this Jesus. If he's done this in so many other people's lives, I want him to do it in my life. I want to give up and surrender my life. And I want to give it to Jesus. I don't know what that looks like, but that guy's saying it's not about perfection. It's just about connection to God. And I would love to start a deep, meaningful connection with God. I want to start 2019 off in faith and say, if he did it in all those other kids' lives, could he do it in my life? I want to know more about Jesus. I'd love to surrender my life to Jesus. If that's you tonight, and you've never done that before, or tonight you're doing it again, and it was like middle school is the last time you did that, would you, with every head bowed and every eye closed, and we're doing that because those of us who have done that in our lives, we're praying right now for you to say, come join the fam. Come join the joy. Come join this journey. Come join the connection. Would you raise your hand if you want that tonight? If that you're saying, that's me. I want a deep, meaningful relationship with God. I'm not connected to him, and I want to be connected to him. I want to start that journey tonight. There's 23 hands in the air right now. Can we celebrate what God's doing tonight? Come on, let's celebrate. There are 23 hands in the air right now. I love you guys. Look, I don't know what kind of church you used to go to in the past, or if you've ever been to church, but y'all, I'm committed to loving God, loving you, and making a difference. And I'm going to have a fun time doing it. We're going to sing a couple songs, and this is where, again, worship is not about just the music, but they're going to give you some pretty good music, and we got a pretty great God. You mix the two, and it's a great experience. Amen? And we're going to go into that. If you raised your hand, I have a gift for you. It's a small book to keep you connected to God. Tell your small group leader that you raised your hand tonight, and they will give you that free gift, which is a small book that's going to keep you connected to God so that you can start this journey. Because, again, you don't got to be perfect. You just got to stay connected to Jesus. I love you. I can't wait to see what God's going to do in 2019. Come on, one last time. Can we celebrate in faith and what God's going to do in 2019? I love you guys.